Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast and trade deadline edition. And it's a crazy deadline as it was, but before we get into the deadline and the craziness of the deadline, subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let me know how you're feeling about the deadline. What do you think about the guys that we got back? It's interesting, right? We were hoping for at least one or two top 100 guys, and we got one. So, but not a bad trade deadline at all. The over under for us in around the industry was that the Mets were about to do about between 6 to 7 trades, right? That's what the consensus was, and the Mets ended up doing this weekend alone 6 trades. If you want to count the Peterson trade, you can, or if you want to count the little a minor trade with the Dodgers, you can, but I'm not going to include the Peterson trade and the minor leagues trade that we did with the Dodgers, that the Mets did with the Dodgers. I'm not going to count that one as well. But if you want to count those, it makes 8. But as far as this weekend alone, with just major leaguers, we traded had 6 trades, and I'm gonna do a little quick breakdown on. Obviously, AJ Minter let us off. He was traded to the Twins for Bruin Agbayani and Billy Amick. Bringing home the son of a former Met. Then Brooks Whaley went. I don't even know if I can say this. Can I say this? Is it okay for me to say the team that Brooks Raley went to? Um, he went to the Phillies. You know, not the not what we expected for Brooks Raley, but I don't know if his age had a factor in this. But he went to the Phillies for Luke Gabrish and John Spikerman. And so, it's going to suck seeing him in the Philly uniform. The first time, the second time, the third time, the fourth time that you see one of the players that you liked on a different team, it's kind of weird seeing them in a different uniform. But that is the way the game goes. You hate that it was a rival, but if it was the best package, and I hope it was, it's okay. Ultimately, he's 37 years old, and relievers from year to year are different. So the next trade was the Brazovan trade to the White Sox for Gabe Davis and um, and Zach Franklin. Obviously, the big money item there, not big money, but the biggest piece there for Brazovan is Davis, big guy. Tools that they hope to harness and get in the lab and get that going. But then we get the Freddie Peralta trade to the Rays for Aiden Smith, Gary Gill Hill, and Emilion Petrie. Again, good farm system. So a lot of these guys are going to rank already top in our farm systems because the Rays had a good farm system, and then Luke Weaver to the Pirates, which honestly I almost thought this was going to be the biggest piece that we get all weekend. Goes to the Pirates for Sammy Stafora, and so I thought at first that was going to be the biggest trade that we make. Um, the starting rotation wasn't. I mean, it was getting a little crazy, because obviously, yes, today was a crazy day for the deadline. You had so many trades. I think it's the busiest that I could remember it. Um, but um, but I don't know about you. But I think it's the busiest that I could remember it. and so it was just so many trades that went on today. And Joe Adell going to Cleveland. It's it was if it was crazy. But going back to the Mets, I thought this was going to be the biggest trade that we got, and so to see the next trade that we'll talk about in a second. But Sammy is a local kid up in New York. Grew up a Mets fan, which is always cool to kind of talk about. A team drafts you that you used to root for as a kid, and that's always a cool story. What he becomes, obviously we don't know. We got Lindor at shortstop, and does he fight for second base with Mitch Voigt, or does he become a trade piece for somebody else? Because ultimately, we don't know if we're going to keep some of these guys, right? And then the final trade, which I hate to say it was the final trade, but the final trade of the day was Clay Holmes and Tyrone Taylor to the Cubs for Jefferson Rojas, um, who automatically becomes our top prospect. Which I'm excited for him. He can help us as soon as next year, possibly. From what I heard and read, he's a guy that's not going to stay at shortstop. So his footwork, um, his mobility is not meant for shortstop, but he could definitely be either a second baseman or third baseman, which we need. So let's see what happens, right? Mitch Voigt making noise down in the minors for us right now. But, obviously this guy's higher ranked, top 100 prospect. And if he could slide into third base or second base, depending on what the future is with Bo Bichette, great. Also, we don't know if he's another trade piece for somebody else. This is all fluid. But let's talk about this team the way it is right now, right? We can wait for all the other conversations of how, what can be possibilities for trade chips. All those conversations we can have at in the off season. But for right now, let's look at this team for what we have right now, and let's look at this team as the guys helping the Mets right now. So if you really look at it, if you want to play that game of these guys are going to stay in the organization, well, Rojas is a guy that will probably move over to third, right? And that's if that happens, and he becomes a very nice major leaguer, a very all-star level player for the Mets. That's an awesome trade. We wanted to come out with a top 100 guy out of this trade deadline. That was the goal. And so the fact that we did get a top 100 guy speaks volumes. We needed to get at least one, and this is a good piece of potential need, right? Because he's definitely not a shortstop. So potential need and a piece that if it's not going to be used as potential need for the Mets, it's a guy that can be used as a trade piece. But as of right now, he could be our future third baseman. As far as Sammy, well, he could. Sorry about that, guys. He could battle for second base with Mitch Voigt. Um, so he could battle for second base with Mitch Voigt and see if he can make the club that way. He's a guy that Mitch Voigt's not a proven guy yet in the organization, right? This is the first season that he's kind of figuring it out, and I'm glad that he is. But ultimately we don't know. So competition breeds excellence, and so um, love the fact that he's going to be here pushing Mitch Voigt. Sammy's going to be pushing Mitch Voigt for that spot. And then you got some other guys. I talked about who was the guy, Amick, that could potentially challenge Reimer and those guys, Reimer and Clifford, and but most of the guys are guys that are going to be role players. To be honest with you, other than the pitchers, if you could develop a Gabe Davis into an awesome pitcher, because that's what they're going to try to do is develop them into starting pitchers, and we'll see what happens with that. Um, Benny Agbayani is a guy that is potentially, a nice story, um, a nice story because he's, a son of a former major leaguer. So it's and it'll be a cool story, but ultimately we're probably not expecting a lot from Benny Agbayani. Um, and let's talk about let's transition a little bit. We can get back to talking about the guys that were here, but one of the things that I wanted to start off with, it, and I kind of got caught up in a number of trades, is who's still here. You know, two of them were a pipe dream, and one even to the last second. I saw Will Salmon trying to uh, tell us who was being traded, and he still had um, Luis Robert being traded towards the end. And honestly, it's a little disappointing that Luis Robert didn't get traded. Um, I'm not sure what the return was. And I didn't listen, so I apologize if he covered it. But I haven't listened to the David Stearns conference yet. It's been a crazy day trying to get this in before the day ends, and so I haven't listened to that yet. I'll go back and listen to it. But it's disappointing that Luis Robert's still here. Um, it would have been nice to get something for him because at the end of the day, you're not picking up his option. You know, I know there was a report there that they were also trying to trade Polanco. Um, that would have been a pipe dream. That would have been a pipe dream. I don't know if there was a guy, if there was a team out there other than potentially the Seattle wanting him back because they know the player that he is, other than Seattle wanting him back. And I don't know if the Mets were willing to pay down any of his contract. I don't know. That'd be a question for David, right off the record. But it's a disappointment to see Luis Robert here, at least Luis Robert, because you wanted him to be traded and to be on another team and potentially let Morabito come up and let him get some action here in the at the end with no pressure and not coming to um, at the time because Morabito came up when there was a lot of pressure on him. Team scuffling, and you wanted to. He probably wanted to make a very good impression and stay up in the ball club, and it just didn't work out. So I would have loved to see him get a little bit of run here towards the end of the season. See him get some play here, but that didn't happen. So it's really disappointed to see Luis Robert here. The good thing is when I'm in Cleveland, hopefully I get to see AJ Ewing in left field, where I was expecting to see Juan Soto because we'll be making a trip up to Cleveland to watch them this weekend. But I digress. The other one was they kind of teased us. This this is where it's funny, right? There was a report out there that San Diego wanted um, Kodak Senga, and it's funny because they kind of dangled it out there. We're getting Senga off the team, so they were dangling it out there, um, and nothing. You know, San Diego doesn't trade for him, and it's just disappointing. Not because um, I don't like Senga. It's disappointing because I was a big Senga fan. It's disappointing because he holds up a roster spot. Um, is he gonna? Obviously we basically cleared house of our bullpen except for Devin Williams and a couple other guys. But is Senga now in the second half of the season going to be a bullpen piece, or is he going to be part of the rotation now that Clay Holmes is gone? That's interesting, right? Where they what direction? Again, apologize if David Stearns already talked about this, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to listen to his press conference. This is just my reaction. And so, um, is that the direction that we're heading? Don't know. The other pipe dream that I had, this is no report of anything being out there, but the other pipe dream is, Manaea is pitching well now, and maybe some team wanted to take a flyer on him, but that wasn't the case. So that didn't happen. So we got those three guys that are still on the team, plus Polanco, which nobody was going to take Polanco, and it's okay. You know, history says that he's a better player than this, and so hopefully, probably not this year, but hopefully next year he shows a little bit more than when he did this year because he's going to be on the team this year unless it's a trade. And I'm a proceed forward assuming that he's on the team next year. So what does it mean for um, the rest of the season for our bullpen since we got rid of so many pieces? Well, Will Salmon just tweeted out that Jeffrey Young is coming up, so we get to see Jeffrey Young and the crazy lefty. Daniel Nunez is back on. Um, I know he was rehabbing and getting back from injury, so Daniel Nunez is back. Nate Lavender, another guy that was slated to um, get healthy. Chase McDermott, Xavier Curry is back, and Christian Pache is with the ball club now, taking over Tyrone Taylor's spot. So again, unfortunately for Morabito, he's not getting the shot. Um, and that's kind of why I wanted to see Luis Robert go because you probably would have seen Christian Pache and Morabito up. And it's just disappointing not to be able to at least see what Morabito can do in the towards the end of the season here. What can you do? But got two lefties, Jan and Lavender up, and you as you all know, Lavender was away from the team, Rule 5 pickup, and then got hurt, and now we got him back. And so the promise that we saw a few years ago now, I think, hopefully comes to fruition as a Met. And now is the time for these guys to shine in the off season, in the end of the season, right? They got 2 months to impress. the front office, right? Because this is a brand new bullpen. This is a brand new bullpen, guys, and so it looks like also Scott, no, Stock is probably staying in the rotation, and he didn't do too bad. A good story, obviously. Not going to be a big part of the future of the Mets, but he's probably going to get a couple weeks here, and maybe we see Jonathan come up towards the end. Um, Maybe not. Who knows? But those are the guys. Will Salmon reporting that, and that's my reaction, guys. That I am glad that we got a top prospect, top 100 prospect. Top prospect from the Pittsburgh organization, from their top prospect list. But ultimately, I'm pretty happy with the trade deadline. I said yesterday that David Stearns is probably going to use these pieces, some of these pieces. Like, for example, Sammy Stafora was originally drafted by the Reds, and the Reds traded him over to Pittsburgh for Key Brian Hayes, and now he gets traded for Luke Weaver. So, for a lot of these minor leaguers, this is not their final landing spot. And that's the thing we also have to take into perspective, is that this isn't their final landing spot. This is not for a lot of these guys. Hopefully, for some of them, like I would love to see Rojas and Stafor up with the Mets, since they're top guys. But ultimately, we don't know if this is their final landing spot. Even though Stafor is a grew up a Mets fan, this might not be his last spot, and that's what I want to leave you guys with. We need to kind of have some perspective on what the deadline really is, right? You know, as fans, we kind of get very emotional and get really excited from and want to be experts at this. We want to make judgment calls on this, but ultimately, as fans, we don't know these guys. You know, these major league teams do this for a living, right? They see these guys on a daily basis, and so they're going to get a grade on each and every guy that came in, right? After the grade that they had them from seeing them from afar. So they're going to have new grades soon from the guys in the organization taking a look at these guys. And with that being said, that's going to let you know which guys they're going to take a shot on and which guys they're going to try to trade for another piece, right? Um, and which guys, if they, which guys become untouchable, and which guys can go in a trade. And so we don't know exactly which what that process is and what that process looks like. We only know from afar. Like for me, I'm watching Ernest Dove, Joe DeMayo, James Shiano to give me an idea because they watch a little bit more minor league baseball than I do. And the Mets podcast, Mark and James over there. And so I watch these guys to get an idea of what's going on. And so, they're somewhat excited for a lot of these guys, not excited for others, disappointed in other things, but I'm not going to get too high or too low on any of them, because in the off season, none of them can be here. That's the reality of things. And so, we got to keep this with an open hand, not get too tight on these prospects, and not to have too much expectation on what they're going to become with the Mets, because they might not become anything with the Mets, right? They might become something with other teams because they get traded for something else. And just like Stefor is the example for this trade deadline. There's probably others that I can look up, but that was the easy one that everybody talked about, right? Guy that was drafted by Cincinnati, traded for Key Brian Hayes, and now traded for Luke Weaver. So, guys, hopefully it works out. I'm excited for the future. This is more of being excited for what's going to happen in the future, for the hope that the Mets will put on a team next year that we can actually follow and be excited about. And so, guys, you know, before I get out of here, I'm gonna get out of here now. I think I said what I need to say, and so subscribe to the channel, like this video. Let me know how you're feeling. Do you got some grades? Do you watch more than I do? Do you get some idea of what these guys are about? Let me know in the comments. Let me know how you're feeling about it. And it's just one of those things where let's see what happens. Let's get excited. We got a brand new team. I'll be up in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Evan Roberts was talking about this in spring training or in the offseason. I don't know when he was talking about it. What's the best road trip to take this year? And he was talking about going to watch this road trip this week, because you got two cities that are pretty close to each other, and you can knock out two stadiums at once. And one of my bucket list items is to try to get to as many stadiums as possible. And so we're going to be up in Cleveland and Pittsburgh to watch some games. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see you know uh, Soto, but hopefully we get to see one of the young guys pitch, and Ewing and Benj and Lindor go off. So, guys, I'll let you know how it all goes. But until next week, let's go Mets.